Welcome back to another chapter of my grandmother's life. In the last chapter, I tempted your taste buds with tales of the Hungarian cuisine. This chapter, we're going to talk about the trials and tribulations that Julia faced having 3 boys in the house and using her kitchen as a workshop. Julia often found her patience tried when the kitchen would be turned into a workshop by her husband and the 3 boys. If a tire needed repaired, why freeze outdoors in the cold garage? Take it in the kitchen. Ma won't mind. Well, of course Ma did mind, especially because it was hard to get supper stepping over inner tubes, tire pumps, and grubby boys. Besides which, there would be a dirty, oily mess to clean up afterward. But she was quiet-mannered and tolerated the inconvenience, never speaking sharply to them. By the time Alexander was in high school, chicken raising was abandoned and the chicken coop was turned into the workshop. A pot-bellied stove was installed for cold weather, workbenches and tool cabinets built, and they began to accumulate more mechanics tools and some woodworking equipment. An arc welder appeared, and this retreat became the refuge for Alex and the 3 boys, and Julia was able to reclaim her kitchen. Alexander saved the money he made doing odd jobs for neighbors and bought a metalworking lathe from Sears Roebuck on time for $10 a month, giving him the first basic experience he needed for a lifelong career as a first-class machinist. Any complaint from Julia sent them scurrying to the workshop to invent some gadget or device to make life easier for her. All of the items that came out of that shop, if they had been patented, manufactured, and sold, the Zabos might have been millionaires many times over. Even Lucille made use of the shop, building projects for her physics exam, like rigging up a doorbell. When he finished high school, Alexander spent a few months at the Coyne Electric and Radio School in Chicago, Illinois. When he returned, he taught Lucille how to rewind the armature for an electric motor. The boys were always looking for ways to make life easier. Alexander built an oil burner for the pot-bellied stove, which dripped used crankcase oil and made it unnecessary to go through the wood chopping process to keep the shop warm. Citing his home metal lathe experience, Alexander talked a local machine shop owner into giving him a job, and by the time he went into the service, he had a wealth of real experience. Years later, before he retired, he was operating numerical tape-controlled machines in the experimental engine development shop for General Motors' diesel engine division. Anthony, or Buddy, went on to become the manager of production control for Ford, and Eddie, my dad, became first a draftsman and then a plant layout engineer working for a time under the direct supervision of Lee Iacocca when he was still at Ford. The little chicken coop workshop proved a fertile training ground for all 3 of these very first generation young Americans. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, my dad loved to gadget. My dad loved to tinker and invent things and spent hours and hours out in our garage and would spend hours in the garage. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this chapter of my grandmother's life. And if you've missed any past chapters, I've created a playlist called My Grandmother's Life, where you can go back and watch and listen to all past chapters.